The city was still asleep when the billionaire's mansion stood in silence. Normally, the wide gates would shine under bright lights. Guards would stand alert, and expensive cars would be lined up like soldiers ready for parade. But this morning, everything was strangely quiet. The servants knocked on his bedroom door, but there was no answer. His bed was empty. His clothes were untouched. His phone lay on the table, switched off. The man who owned half the city, the man whose face was on every magazine, had disappeared overnight. News spread like fire. Billionaire missing. Flashed across TV screens. Cameras rushed to his gates. Business partners called each other in panic. His family sat in shock, whispering rumors. Some thought he had been kidnapped. Some thought he had gone insane. Others whispered that maybe he had taken his own life, but the truth was far stranger than anyone could imagine. He was not lost. He was not kidnapped. He was not dead. The billionaire had left everything behind: his empire, his family name, his billions, and had walked out into the streets, with only the clothes on his back. Why would a man who had everything suddenly choose to live like a beggar? What kind of secret could force him to abandon the life people dream about? The world did not know, but he knew. For years, the billionaire had worn a mask. In public, he was confident, powerful, untouchable. Behind closed doors, he was lonely, empty, restless. He could buy anything, yet nothing satisfied him. Every night, he lay awake in his golden bed, staring at the ceiling, asking himself the same question: why am I not happy? His family loved his money more than his heart. His friends cared more about his wealth than his words. The laughter in his mansion felt fake, echoing off marble walls. He was surrounded by everything, yet he felt he had nothing. One night, as the rain beat against the glass windows of his high-rise office, he looked down at the city streets. He saw people huddled together under small pieces of cardboard, protecting themselves from the storm. They had no food, no warm blankets, no safety. And yet, he noticed something strange. Some of them were laughing. Some of them were singing. Some of them even shared the little food they had. He leaned back in his chair and whispered to himself, "How can people who have nothing still find reasons to smile? Why can't I?" That question did not leave him. It followed him everywhere: board meetings, private dinners, even during his travels in private jets. Until one night, he made a decision that shocked even himself. He would leave it all behind without telling anyone. He walked out of his mansion. No suitcase, no credit card, no security, just plain clothes. No one recognized him when he stepped into the dark streets. For the first time in his life, he felt small, invisible. Nobody cared who he was. Nobody looked twice. He was just another man in dirty shoes and old clothes, but deep inside, he felt strangely free. The chains of luxury were gone. The crown of wealth was gone. The world would now see him as nothing. And that was exactly what he wanted. By morning, the city was in chaos. TV reporters shouted outside his gates. His company's stock dropped. Business partners fought to take control. His family argued, confused and angry. "Where is he?" shouted one of his brothers. "He lost his mind," whispered another. "Maybe someone took him," said his mother with tears in her eyes. But no one truly knew where he was. He was sitting on a cold sidewalk in an old part of the city. His hands shook as he tried to keep warm. People walked past him without care. A man tossed him a dirty look. A woman pulled her child away from him. The smell of street food reached his nose, and for the first time in his life, his stomach growled in real hunger. Hours passed. He begged quietly for food, but no one listened. Shopkeepers shouted at him to go away. Street dogs barked at him. Children laughed at his dirty appearance. He felt humiliation burn inside him. All his life, people had bowed in front of him, offered him the best seat, smiled when he entered the room. Now, nobody cared if he lived or died. And strangely, this was the lesson he had been searching for, but he did not yet know. The real lesson was still waiting. A lesson that would not come from books or business schools or million-dollar advisors. It would come from a poor black boy, one who had nothing in his pockets, but everything in his heart. This boy would change the billionaire's life forever. That night, as the billionaire shivered in the corner of a dark alley, the city's lights glowing in the distance, he thought of his past life. He remembered the long tables filled with food, where half of it was thrown away. He remembered the closets full of clothes, where most of them were never worn. He remembered the expensive gifts he bought for people who already had everything, and now he had nothing, not even a piece of bread. His lips were dry, his body weak, his heart heavy. He wondered if he had made a mistake. But just when he thought of giving up, footsteps approached. A small shadow stood in front of him. The billionaire slowly lifted his head. It was a boy. A poor black boy, maybe 10 or 11 years old, holding a small piece of bread in his hand. The boy looked at him with curious eyes. Without a word, he broke the bread in half and gave one piece to the billionaire. The billionaire stared at the bread, then at the boy. His throat tightened. He wanted to ask, "Why would you share when you have so little?" But the boy only smiled and said softly, "When you have little, you know how to share." Those simple words shook the billionaire more than any speech, any book, or any award he had ever received. For the first time, he tasted real kindness, and that night marked the beginning of a journey that would change him forever. The city was still searching for him. News channels repeated the same question over and over again. Why would the billionaire vanish without a word? Some said it was a scandal. Others said it was revenge. But the truth was much more personal. It's much more painful. Because the billionaire had a secret that nobody knew. For years, he had lived in a golden cage. To the outside world, he was powerful, brilliant, untouchable. But behind closed doors, he was restless. He had everything money could: buy mansions, cars, private islands, luxury watches. Yet every night, when the world was asleep, he sat awake staring at the ceiling, asking himself, "Why am I not happy?" His empire was huge, but his heart was empty. He remembered his childhood. He had grown up poor, in a small house with thin walls. His father worked long hours just to bring bread to the table. His mother stitched clothes at night, her hands bleeding from the needle. They had little, but they had each other. They laughed, they prayed, they dreamed. Then life changed. He studied hard, worked harder, and built an empire step by step. He bought everything he once wished for. But with every step higher, something inside him broke. The laughter faded. The simple joy of eating together vanished. The warmth of human touch was replaced by cold business contracts. He had become rich in wealth, but poor in soul. He often looked at his family now. They loved his money, not him. His wife was more interested in jewelry than in his words. His children cared more about expensive gifts than about his presence. His friends stayed close only because of his power. He was surrounded by people, but felt completely alone. At night, the sound of silence in his mansion was louder than any crowd. He walked through golden halls, but felt like a prisoner. He began to ask himself dangerous questions. What if I left it all? Would anyone still care for me? Would anyone still love me if I had nothing? The answer scared him. Then one night, everything changed. He was attending a charity dinner in a 5-star hotel. The chandeliers sparkled above, the tables overflowed with food, and people dressed in diamonds and silk laughed loudly. Outside the tall glass windows, he saw a different scene. On the dark street, a group of homeless children huddled together under a torn blanket. They had no food, no warm clothes, and yet they were laughing. They were playing. One boy even broke a piece of stale bread and shared it with the others. The billionaire froze. He could not take his eyes off them. Here he was, sitting among people with overflowing plates, yet none of them were truly smiling. And there, outside in the cold, children with nothing were laughing like their hearts were free. That image burned inside him. Later that night, he sat alone in his office. The city glittered below him. He whispered to himself, "Maybe I've been rich in the wrong way. Maybe true wealth isn't in what we own, but in what we feel." The thought grew stronger every day. It became a storm inside his chest. Until one evening, he made a decision so shocking, even he could barely believe it. He would leave it all. No one knew. No one was told. One night, while his mansion slept, he stood before the mirror. For the first time, he looked at himself not as a billionaire, but as a man. He wore simple clothes, no expensive watch, no gold ring. He placed his phone on the table, turned off forever. He took nothing with him, not a single dollar, not a single driver, not even a bodyguard. He opened the heavy gate of his mansion and walked into the dark streets. It was the most terrifying step of his life, but also the most honest. The first day was brutal. He tried to beg for food, but his voice shook with shame. Shopkeepers pushed him away. Children mocked his dirty clothes. People walked past him as if he did not exist. His stomach growled in pain. His body ached on the hard concrete ground. He realized how invisible the poor truly were. When he was rich, the world bent down before him. Now, no one even looked at him. He whispered to himself, trembling, "So this is what it feels like, to be nothing." And yet, deep inside, he felt a strange relief. No one cared about his name. No one cared about his money. No one wanted a favor. He was finally free from the heavy crown of wealth. Meanwhile, the outside world was in chaos. News reporters shouted outside his gates, "Where is the billionaire? Was he kidnapped? Did he run away with secret money?" His family was in shock. His wife was furious, his children confused. Business partners scrambled to protect their shares. Lawyers searched for answers in contracts. But nobody could explain why a man with everything would vanish without a trace. And while the world searched for him, he was sitting alone in a dark alley, holding his empty stomach, learning the taste of hunger. On his third day, he almost gave up. He was too weak to stand, too tired to move. His lips were dry, his body heavy. He thought, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I will die here. But then, footsteps echoed in the alley. A small figure appeared. A boy, a poor black boy, no older than 10. The boy looked at him, not with disgust, not with fear, but with simple human concern. In his hand he held a small piece of bread. The boy broke it into 2 halves. He kept one for himself, and without saying much, offered the other half to the billionaire. The billionaire stared at the bread, his eyes filling with tears. Nobody had given him anything freely in years. Every gift, every favor, every smile he had received before always came with a price. But this was different. With a trembling voice, he whispered, "Why? Why would you share when you have so little?" The boy looked into his eyes and replied softly, "When you have little, you know how to share." Those words hit him harder than any business loss, any scandal, any betrayal. A child with nothing had just taught him the meaning of true wealth. That night, the billionaire lay awake on the cold ground, holding the piece of bread in his hand like it was treasure. He realized his secret. He had left billions not to escape, but to find something money could never buy: kindness, humanity, truth, and the poor black boy, with empty pockets but a rich heart, had given him his first answer. The first night was the hardest. The billionaire, who once slept in silk sheets on a golden bed, now lay on the cold ground of a broken sidewalk. The concrete pressed against his back, the wind cut through his thin clothes, and the noise of the city never stopped. Car horns, stray dogs barking, drunken voices, everything made him restless. He pulled his arms around himself, trying to stay warm. But the cold was merciless. Hours felt like years. When dawn finally arrived, his body ached as if he had been beaten. His eyes were red, his lips dry. His stomach growled like a wild animal, reminding him he had eaten nothing since he left his mansion. This was the first true morning of his new life. The city woke up slowly. Shops opened, buses roared, people hurried to work. The billionaire sat against a dirty wall, watching them. He noticed how nobody looked at him. Their eyes passed over him as if he didn't exist. He whispered to himself, "So this is what it feels like, to be invisible." Back in his old life, cameras flashed wherever he went. Reporters asked questions. People begged for his attention. Now, he was just another shadow in the streets, unnoticed and unwanted. Hunger hit him harder by the hour. He could no longer ignore it. His stomach burned, his head felt light. He had never begged in his life. The very thought made him sick with shame. But survival left no choice. He forced himself to stand. His legs shook. Slowly, he walked to a small bakery at the corner. The smell of fresh bread made his mouth water. He stepped forward and whispered to the shopkeeper, "Sir, could I have something to eat? Just a small piece?" The shopkeeper looked at him from head to toe, dirty clothes, unshaven face, tired eyes. His expression turned cold. "Get out," he shouted. "No money, no food. Don't beg here." The words hit the billionaire like a slap. He stepped back quickly, his cheeks burning. People around him stared with disgust. A woman pulled her child away, whispering, "Stay away from that man." For the first time, he felt the weight of humiliation. He tried again at another shop, this time at a fruit stall. "Please, one apple," he begged. The fruit seller waved a stick at him. "Go away, beggar. Don't scare my customers." The billionaire lowered his head and walked away. His throat was dry, his stomach screamed, but his heart hurt even more, he thought. When I had billions, food was always in front of me more than I could eat. And now I can't even get one bite of bread. The world that once bowed to him now treated him like trash. Hours dragged by. The sun burned hot above, sweat ran down his back, yet his body shivered from weakness. He found an old bench near a park and sat down, clutching his stomach. Children played nearby, their laughter cutting through his silence. One little boy pointed at him and laughed. "Look, Mama, that man is dirty." The mother quickly pulled the child away, not even glancing at the billionaire. He covered his face with his hands. Tears filled his eyes, but he forced them back. "I chose this," he told himself. "I wanted to feel this life. I cannot turn back now." As evening approached, hunger became unbearable. He searched the garbage bins behind restaurants, hoping to find leftovers. His hands trembled as he lifted a lid. The smell was rotten. Flies buzzed. But inside, he found a half-eaten sandwich. He froze. All his life. People served him the most expensive food on golden plates. Chefs from around the world cooked for him. And now, here he was, looking at trash, considering eating it. He picked up the sandwich. The bread was stale, the filling spoiled. His throat tightened. He wanted to throw it back, but his stomach screamed louder. With shaking hands, he took a bite. Tears rolled down his cheeks. Not from the taste, but from the crushing truth. He whispered, "So this is hunger. Real hunger." Night fell again. He found shelter under a broken roof near an alley. The wind was colder than the night before. Stray dogs barked nearby, and he clutched himself tightly, afraid they might attack. As he lay down, the city lights blinked in the distance. Somewhere beyond those lights was his mansion, his soft bed, his warm meals, his servants ready to answer his call. But that world felt like a dream now. This was his reality. And deep inside, he realized something important. He had spent his whole life thinking the poor were lazy, that they could always work harder if they wanted to escape poverty. But now, lying in dirt, his body weak, his stomach empty, he understood it wasn't laziness. It was survival. Just making it through one day on the streets was harder than building an empire. On the third morning, he awoke to a sharp pain in his stomach. His body begged for food. He tried again to beg, this time on a busy street. "Please, some change. Anything to eat," he whispered to strangers. Most ignored him. Some frowned. A few tossed angry words. "Get a job!" "Stop bothering people." Every rejection cut deeper than the last. Finally, a man threw a single coin at him. It rolled on the ground. The billionaire picked it up with trembling fingers, staring at it like treasure. It was enough to buy one small piece of bread. He ate it slowly, every bite tasting like gold. But the bread didn't fill him for long. By evening, the hunger returned. He sat on the same sidewalk, weak and tired. The world moved around him, loud and fast, while he sat still like a broken statue. He thought, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I cannot survive here. Maybe I will die on these streets. As the sun began to set, he lowered his head, ready to give up. Then he heard footsteps. A small figure approached. A boy, a poor black boy, no older than 10. His clothes were torn, his feet bare, his hands dirty, and yet his eyes were alive, filled with light. The boy held a small piece of bread in his hand. He looked at the billionaire, then broke the bread into 2 halves. Without hesitation, he held one half out. The billionaire's eyes widened. His throat tightened. Nobody had shown him kindness in days. Nobody had even looked at him with respect. And here was a child hungry himself, willing to share the little he had, with shaking hands. The billionaire took the bread. Tears filled his eyes. He wanted to ask, "Why would you give me this when you need it more?" But before he could speak, the boy smiled and whispered softly, "When you have little, you know how to share?" Those words pierced the billionaire's heart like lightning. For the first time, he tasted not just bread, but kindness. For the first time in years, he felt something he had lost hope. That night, as he ate the boy's bread under the stars, he realized his journey had just begun. He had left billions behind to learn the truth. And now, the truth had found Jim in the heart of a poor black boy. This boy, with nothing in his pockets but everything in his soul, would teach him lessons no book or university ever could, and the billionaire knew his life would never be the same again. The piece of bread the boy gave him was small, but to the billionaire, it felt like the richest meal of his life. He ate slowly, each bite filling not just his stomach, but also his heart. For the first time since leaving his mansion, he felt warmth not from food, but from kindness. That night, he lay under a broken roof, staring at the sky. The boy's words echoed in his mind. "When you have little, you know how to share." He whispered to himself, "I had billions, but I never knew how to share like that boy." But the streets had no mercy, and soon the real struggle began. The next morning, hunger returned. The bread was gone. His stomach growled louder than before. His body was weak, but his pride was weaker. He had never begged in his life, and yet now he had no choice. He walked to a crowded marketplace. The people rushed around, buying vegetables, bargaining for fish, carrying heavy bags. He sat in a corner and whispered, almost too softly, "Please, some food. Just a little." But nobody listened. Some walked past as if he was invisible. Others frowned at him, muttering another beggar. His cheeks burned with shame. He thought about the times he had donated millions at charity events, standing proudly for cameras, giving speeches about helping the poor. But now, when he truly needed help, nobody even looked at him. He forced himself to try again. He stood near a tea stall and whispered, "Sir, cup of tea, please. I have no money." The shopkeeper snapped at him, "Go away. Don't beg here. You'll chase away my customers." The billionaire lowered his head and walked away. Every word was like a stone thrown at his heart. By afternoon, the sun burned hot. His skin stung, sweat dripped, and his lips cracked. He searched garbage bins, just as he had done before. In one bin, he found a banana peel with a little fruit left on it. He held it in his trembling hands, stared at it for a long time, then ate it. Tears filled his eyes. He whispered, "This is what it means to fight for survival." The days grew harder. He had no shelter. He slept on benches, under bridges, in dirty alleys. His body grew thinner, his beard rough, his clothes torn. People crossed the street to avoid him. One evening, he tried to rest near a shop, but the owner shouted, "Move away, you'll scare my customers." He dragged himself to another corner, humiliated. For the first time, he realized how cruel the world could be to those who had nothing. But just when despair grew strongest, the boy appeared again. The poor black boy walked toward him, carrying a small bundle. He unwrapped it and handed the billionaire a piece of bread and some rice wrapped in paper. The billionaire's eyes widened. Where did you get this?" The boy smiled shyly. "I worked today. I carried water for a shop, They gave me this food, and I want to share it with you." The billionaire's throat tightened. His vision blurred with tears. He whispered, "Why do you give me this? You are just a child. You need it more than me." The boy shook his head. "My grandmother taught me when you share, food tastes better. When you give, your heart feels lighter." The billionaire ate slowly, every bite heavy with emotion. He thought about the feasts in his mansion where food was wasted daily. And here was a boy, living with scraps, teaching him the true value of sharing. That night, he followed the boy home. Not because he was suspicious, but because he was curious. He wanted to know where this boy came from. The boy led him to a broken shack at the edge of the city. The roof leaked, the walls were thin, the floor was dirt. Inside, an old woman lay on a Maddie's grandmother. She looked frail, her eyes tired but kind. The boy introduced him. "Grandma, this is the man I told you about. He is hungry like us." The grandmother smiled weakly. "If he is hungry, then he is family." The billionaire's heart trembled. Family. That word sounded foreign to him now. His own family, living in luxury, had never spoken with such warmth. He spent the night near the boy's shack. It was cold, the floor was hard, but for the first time in years, he didn't feel lonely. The boy talked endlessly about how he wanted to study, how he wanted to help his grandmother, how he dreamed of a better life. The billionaire listened silently, his chest heavy. He had the power to give this boy everything. But right now, he had nothing. The following days tested him even more. Hunger never left. Sometimes he found nothing to eat. Sometimes he drank water just to silence the growl in his stomach. Sometimes he worked small jobs carrying boxes, sweeping streets just to earn a coin. Each coin felt heavier than the millions he once had. One afternoon, after carrying heavy water buckets, he earned a few coins. He bought bread. But instead of eating it all, he broke it into 2 pieces and gave half to the boy. The boy smiled wide, his eyes glowing. "See? You are learning. Sharing makes you feel rich." The billionaire's lips trembled. He realized the boy was right. For the first time, giving felt better than receiving, but the streets didn't forgive easily. One night, a group of men mocked him. They laughed at his dirty clothes, called him names, and threw stones near his feet. He wanted to shout, to say, "I was once richer than all of you combined." But he stayed silent, because here on the streets he was just another beggar. He sat quietly until they left, his eyes burning with shame. The boy found him later and said, "Don't listen to them. They don't know your heart. If you stay kind, you are stronger than them." The billionaire hugged the boy tightly. For the first time in years, he felt someone truly cared. Days turned into weeks. The billionaire's struggles grew, but so did his lessons. He learned to value every crumb of bread, learned how cruel the world could be to the weak. And most importantly, he learned that kindness, even in poverty, was more powerful than money and luxury. Every night before closing his eyes, he whispered, "I thought I left billions to lose everything, but maybe I left billions to finally find myself." And though his body grew weaker, his heart grew stronger, because of the poor black boy who gave him light in the darkest days. The billionaire had now lived several days on the streets. His body was thinner, his face darker with dust, his clothes torn beyond repair. Each day was a battle with hunger, with humiliation, with cold nights that cut through his bones. He had once been a man who controlled empires. Now he was a man who struggled just to survive until tomorrow. But in this broken world, something unexpected happened. Something that would change everything. The boy appeared. It was a late afternoon. Sun was dipping behind tall buildings, painting the sky in shades of orange. The billionaire sat on a cold bench, clutching his stomach. He hadn't eaten since the morning. His legs felt weak, his lips cracked. Around him, the market bustled with life. People bought fresh fruits, bargaining loudly. Children ran past with sweets in their hands. The smell of roasted corn and fried bread filled the air. But none of it reached him. He lowered his head, whispering to himself, "Maybe I won't last much longer. Maybe this was a mistake." Then he heard small footsteps. He lifted his eyes slowly. A boy stood in front of him. The boy was thin, no older than 10 or 11. His skin was dark, his hair curly, his clothes torn and dusty. His feet were bare, his hands scratched from work, yet his eyes shone with something rare warmth, innocence, and life. In his tiny hands, he held a piece of bread. He looked at the billionaire with quiet curiosity. Without a word, the boy broke the bread into 2 pieces. He kept one half for himself and held out the other. The billionaire stared at it. His throat tightened. His chest ached. For days, people had pushed him away, shouted at him, treated him like dirt. And here, a poor boy with almost nothing was offering him food. His lips trembled. "Why? Why would you give this to me?" The boy smiled softly. His voice was calm, almost wise, because when you have little, you know how to share. The billionaire froze. Those words struck him like lightning. With trembling hands, he took the bread. Tears filled his eyes as he chewed slowly. It wasn't just bread, it was kindness, raw and pure, something money had never bought him. The boy sat beside him. Together, they ate in silence. For the first time in days, the billionaire didn't feel alone. Later that evening, the boy said, "Come with me. My grandmother will not let you stay hungry." The billionaire hesitated. Pride told him to refuse, but his heart, broken and tired, told him to follow, so he walked with the boy through narrow streets, past broken houses until they reached a small shack at the edge of the city. The roof leaked. The walls were cracked, and the floor was dirt. Inside, an old woman lay on a thin mat, her hands weak, her eyes gentle. "Grandma," the boy said, "this man was hungry. I gave him bread. Can he stay here for a while?" The grandmother looked at the billionaire. She saw not his dirty clothes, not his weak body, but his human need. She nodded softly. "If he is hungry," she said, "then he is family." The billionaire's heart shook. Family. He hadn't heard that word with love in years. His own family, living in luxury, had never spoken to him like this. He whispered, "Thank you." But his voice broke. That night, he sat outside the shack, listening to the boy and his grandmother talk. Their lives were hard. Their food was little. Their house was broken, but their laughter was real. He thought about his mansion, filled with silence. Thought about his family dinners, filled with arguments. For the first time, he wondered if the poor had something the rich had lost. The next morning, the boy woke him up. "Come," he said, "you must learn how to survive here." The billionaire followed him. The boy carried buckets of water for shopkeepers, cleaned the floor of a tea stall, and ran errands for neighbors. For each small job, he earned a coin or a little food. By afternoon, the boy handed him a piece of bread and some rice. The billionaire stared at him. "Why are you giving this to me?" "You worked for it," the boy smiled. "Because when we share, we both eat. Alone, I might eat more, but together, the food feels bigger." The billionaire's throat tightened. Every day this boy gave lessons no school had taught him. Over the following days, the boy stayed by his side. He showed him where to find safe water, which corners were dangerous at night, how to avoid the gangs that stole from the homeless. But more than survival, the boy showed him how to live with dignity, even in poverty. One evening when the billionaire looked sad, the boy asked, "Why do you look down so much?" The billionaire sighed. "Because I had everything once, and now I have nothing." The boy tilted his head. "You are wrong. You have me. You have Grandma. You have food today. That is something." The billionaire's eyes filled with tears. A child with nothing was teaching him gratitude. But the struggles didn't stop. There were days when the boy had no work. Days when both of them went hungry. Days when they drank only water and slept with empty stomachs. Yet the boy never complained. He always smiled, always found something to be thankful for. One night, as they lay under the stars, the boy whispered, "Look, the sky is free. Rich or poor, we all can see it. That means we all share something big." The billionaire stared at the stars. His chest ached. For years he had looked at the world through walls of glass, locked away in his towers. But here, under the open sky, he finally felt connected. The bond between the two grew stronger each day. The billionaire, once a man who trusted no one, now trusted a boy with all his heart. He realized something shocking in his world of wealth. Everyone wanted something from him. But this boy wanted nothing except to share. And that made the boy richer than all the billionaires in the world. One evening, after sharing their small dinner, the billionaire whispered, "You have given me more than anyone ever has. But I don't even know your name." The boy smiled shyly. "My name is Samuel." The billionaire repeated it softly. "Samuel." He thought, "A child with nothing but bread has taught me more than all the wise men I paid in my life." And he knew. From that moment, Samuel would not just be a boy he met on the streets. Samuel would be his teacher, his guide. His light in the darkness. The nights on the streets were always cold. Even when the sky was clear, a chill wrapped around the billionaire's body like a chain. He often pulled his torn jacket tighter, but it never helped. One night, as he sat shivering, Samuel noticed. The boy quietly removed his own small cloth and placed it over the billionaire's shoulders. The billionaire looked at him in shock. "No, you need this more than me." Samuel shook his head. "We share everything. If you are cold, I am cold. If you are warm, I am warm." Tears burned the billionaire's eyes. In his mansion, he had closets filled with clothes. He had never shared them, not even with people who needed them most. Yet here was a boy with almost nothing, giving away half of what little he had. That night, as the billionaire lay awake, he whispered, "This boy has less than anyone I've met, but he gives more than anyone I've known." The next morning, Samuel woke him up early. "Come," the boy said, his eyes bright. "Today you will learn something important." The billionaire followed, though his body was weak. His stomach was empty again, growling with hunger. He thought Samuel was leading him to food. Instead, Samuel took him to a narrow alley where 3 small children sat on the ground. Their faces were thin, their eyes tired. They had no shoes, no food, nothing. Samuel reached into his pocket and pulled out a piece of bread he'd earned the day before by carrying water for a shopkeeper. He broke it into 4 pieces, gave one to each child. Calsum stepped the smallest piece for himself. The billionaire stared in disbelief. "Why? Why would you do that? You had so little, Samuel. You could have eaten it all. Why give it away?" Samuel smiled, chewing his tiny piece of bread. "Because when you give, you are never hungry in your heart." The billionaire felt something crack inside him. He remembered the banquets in his mansion, long tables covered with dishes, food wasted, thrown into trash. He remembered how he never even noticed, and now he watched a boy give away his only bread to children who had even less. His throat tightened. "Samuel, I don't understand. Doesn't it hurt to give away what you need?" Samuel shook his head. "No, it hurts more when you see someone hungry and do nothing." The billionaire lowered his head. His eyes filled with tears. He had seen hunger before, but from a distance, through car windows or charity photos. He had never sat in it. He had never felt it clawed his stomach, never tasted the desperation of survival, and he had never felt the warmth of giving away. It's the last piece of bread, until now. That evening, Samuel handed the billionaire a coin. "I earned this today. Buy something small for yourself." The billionaire held the coin in his palm. It was tiny, worthless, compared to the billions he once had. But here, in this world of hunger and dust, it was gold. He walked to a food stall, planning to buy a piece of bread. But as he stood in line, he saw an old man sitting nearby, shaking with weakness. His lips were pale, his body frail. The billionaire froze. He thought about Samuel's words. "It hurts more when you see someone hungry and do nothing." His heart pounded. His fingers tightened around the coin. Then slowly, he stepped toward the old man. He placed the coin in his hand. "Here, this is for you. Buy some food." The old man's eyes widened. He whispered, "Bless you." The billionaire walked away, his stomach still empty. But for the first time, he felt full. Not in his body, but in his soul. That night he told Samuel what happened. Samuel grinned widely. See? You learned the lesson. Food fills your stomach for hours, but kindness fills your heart forever. The billionaire laughed softly, a sound he hadn't made in weeks. His eyes shone with tears. Samuel, you are a child, but you are wiser than all the men I ever paid for advice. Samuel tilted his head. Maybe wisdom doesn't come from money. Maybe it comes from the heart. Over the next few days, the billionaire practiced what Samuel taught him. He shared what little food he had. He gave away small things, a coin, a piece of bread. Every time, his heart grew lighter. He began to notice things he had ignored before, the pain in people's eyes, the silent struggles, the hidden dignity of the poor, and slowly, he realized something shocking. He had left billions to find freedom. But here on the streets, a poor black boy was giving him lessons worth more than all his fortune. One evening, as the sky darkened, Samuel asked him, "Do you miss your old life?" The billionaire paused. For a long time, he didn't answer. Finally, he said softly, "I miss the comfort, the food, the bed, the clothes, but I don't miss the people. I don't miss the emptiness." Samuel nodded wisely. Comfort without love is still empty. Love without comfort is still full. The billionaire stared at him. "Samuel, you are teaching me things I should have learned long ago." Samuel smiled. "Then learn them now. It is never too late." The lesson of kindness had taken root in the billionaire's heart. He no longer saw himself as a man who had lost everything. He began to see himself as a man who was finally learning what mattered. And every night, before he closed his eyes, he whispered the same words. "I thought I had given up my fortune, but now I see. I was poor even when I was rich. And because of a boy with nothing, I am finally learning how to be rich in the heart." The lesson of kindness stayed in the billionaire's heart. For the first time in his life, he had given away something small but precious, and it made him feel richer than all the billions he once owned. But the streets were not done with him yet. They had more tests, harder than anything he had faced before. This time, it was hunger and humiliation. It began with an empty stomach that refused to stay quiet. For 2 days, the billionaire had eaten almost nothing. Samuel had shared half a piece of bread, but it was gone quickly. Now, his body trembled with weakness. Each step felt heavy. His legs wobbled. His lips were dry, his throat burning. Samuel tried to cheer him up. "Don't worry. We will find work today. We will earn something." Shops had no jobs. Vendors pushed them away. A tea stall owner shouted, "I don't need beggars hanging around here." The billionaire lowered his head, shame burning his chest. He was not used to being spoken to like this. But here, on the streets, respect was a luxury he could not buy. By afternoon, he was desperate. The smell of roasted corn filled the air, and his stomach screamed. He saw a stall where a man was selling hot bread. His hands shook as he whispered, "Please, sir, just one piece of bread." The vendor glared. "Do you have money?" The billionaire shook his head. "Then get out." The man shouted, waving his hand. "Don't stand here like a dog. You'll scare away my real customers." The billionaire's face turned red. People nearby stared and whispered. A child pointed and laughed. "Look at the beggar. He's so dirty." The billionaire turned away quickly, his chest heavy with shame. His eyes burned with tears. Samuel ran to him. "Don't listen to them," the boy said softly. "They don't know your heart. You are not less than them." But the billionaire shook his head. "I was once a man they all respected. Now they laugh at me like I am dirt." Samuel placed his small hand on his arm. "Respect is not in clothes. Respect is in kindness. Don't forget that." The billionaire closed his eyes. The boy's words comforted him, but his stomach still hurt. Hunger was stronger than pride. That night, the hunger grew unbearable. His body was so weak he could barely walk. He lay on the ground, shivering. Samuel sat beside him, holding his hand. "Don't give up. Tomorrow will be better," the billionaire whispered. "I don't know if I can survive this, Samuel. Maybe I made a mistake leaving everything behind. Samuel shook his head firmly. No, you didn't make a mistake. You are learning. Learning is never a mistake. The billionaire stared at him in the dim light. How can you be so strong, Samuel? You are just a child. Samuel smiled sadly. Because I never had a choice. When you are poor, you must be strong. The next morning, Samuel took him to a construction site. Workers were lifting heavy bricks and mixing cement. Samuel asked the supervisor if they could help. The man looked at Samuel, then at the billionaire's weak frame. He laughed. This old beggar? He can't even carry his own weight. Get lost. The workers laughed loudly. Some clapped their hands, mocking him. The billionaire's face turned pale. He wanted to shout that he had once built skyscrapers, that men like these had once begged him for jobs. But the words stayed in his throat. He lowered his head and walked away slowly. Each laugh behind him felt like a knife in his back. Later, as they sat by the roadside, Samuel tried to encourage him. Don't let their words hurt you. They don't see who you are inside. The billionaire whispered, Samuel, I never knew humiliation like this. I thought losing my money would be hard, but losing my dignity? It is worse. Samuel nodded. Yes, it hurts. But remember, even when they insult you, you can still choose to be kind. That is your dignity. The billionaire's eyes filled with tears. He thought about all the times he had judged the poor from his high tower. He had seen them as lazy, weak, useless. Now he was living their pain. Now he knew how wrong he had been. One evening, as they searched for scraps near a garbage bin, a group of boys spotted them. They started mocking loudly. Look at the rich beggar, one boy shouted. Maybe he lost his mansion. Another laughed. Hey, old man, bark like a dog and we'll give you a coin. A third teased. The billionaire froze. His hands shook. His chest pounded with anger and shame. For a moment, he almost gave in, almost did what they asked because of hunger, but Samuel stepped forward. His small voice was strong. Stop. He is not a dog. He is my friend. You have no right to speak like that. The boys laughed again, but Samuel didn't back down. He pulled the billionaire's arm and whispered, Don't listen. Come. Let's go. The billionaire walked away silently, tears rolling down his cheeks that night. As they lay under the stars, the billionaire whispered, Samuel, today you defended me. Why? I am just a broken man now. Samuel looked at him seriously. Because you are not broken, you are learning. You are stronger than they know, and one day you will show them. The billionaire's throat tightened. He hugged the boy tightly, whispering, You are the only one who sees me, Samuel. The only one. The hunger, the humiliation, it did not break him. Instead, it shaped him. He began to see that true strength was not in power or money. True strength was in surviving hunger with dignity. It was in facing humiliation without hatred. And through it all, Samuel stood by him, guiding him with words far beyond his years. That night, before closing his eyes, the billionaire whispered to himself, I was once a man with everything but empty inside. Now I am a man with nothing, yet a child with nothing teaches me how to be full. Maybe this is the wealth I was searching for all along. The billionaire had now spent many days with Samuel. Together, they faced hunger, cold nights, and cruel words. Yet through all the pain, the boy never complained. He laughed, he shared, and he protected the billionaire like a true friend. But the billionaire often wondered, how can such a young boy be so strong? There had to be something more. Something hidden. A secret. One afternoon, after a long morning of searching for scraps, the billionaire sat beside Samuel outside the shack. The grandmother was resting inside, coughing softly. Samuel, the billionaire, said gently, You are just a child. You should be in school, not working for food. Why don't you go? Why are you here, living like this? Samuel lowered his head. His small fingers played with the dust on the ground. For the first time, his usual bright eyes looked sad. Finally, he whispered, I used to go to school. I loved it. I loved learning, reading, writing, but he paused, swallowing hard. When my parents died, we had no money. Grandma couldn't pay the school fees, so I stopped going. I started working instead. The billionaire's chest tightened. Your parents, they are gone? Samuel nodded slowly. My father worked at a factory. There was an accident. He never came home. My mother, she got sick soon after. We didn't have money for medicine. The boy's voice cracked. His hands trembled. But still, he did not cry. He looked up, his eyes steady. So I became the man of the house. I had to take care of Grandma. I had no choice. The billionaire's throat burned. He turned his face away, tears filling his eyes. This boy who gave away bread, who spoke of kindness, who protected him with courage, this boy carried a burden no child should ever carry, and yet he smiled. He still found joy in little things. He still gave, even when the world had taken everything from him. The billionaire thought to himself, this child is richer in spirit than all the men I once knew in my world of wealth. That evening, as the sun set, the billionaire noticed something else. Samuel took out a torn notebook from under his mat. It was old, its pages yellow, its cover broken. What is that? The billionaire asked. Samuel smiled shyly. My dream. He opened the notebook. Inside, in shaky handwriting, were numbers, letters, small drawings. Some words were misspelled, some pages half-filled. But every line showed effort, hope, and love. I write whenever I can, Samuel explained. I don't have a teacher now, but I still try to learn. Because one day, I want to become someone. I want to build a life where Grandma doesn't have to suffer. The billionaire took the notebook gently, his fingers brushing the pages. His eyes blurred with tears. Here was a child with no school, no books, no money, yet still holding on to a dream. The billionaire whispered Samuel, you are already someone. You are my teacher. Days passed, and the billionaire noticed more about Samuel. He noticed how the boy always saved a little food for his grandmother, even when he was starving. He noticed how Samuel carried water for others, not just for money, but because he liked to help. He noticed how Samuel, though poor, always greeted people with respect, and slowly, billionaire realized, Samuel's secret was not just his tragic past. His real secret was his strength, his heart, his ability to stay kind in a world that gave him nothing. But there was another part of Samuel's secret, one the billionaire discovered by accident. One night, as the billionaire lay awake, he heard Samuel whispering softly. At first, he thought the boy was talking in his sleep, but when he listened closely, he realized Samuel was praying. The boy whispered, God, thank you for today. Thank you for the food, even if it was small. Thank you for sending me a friend who understands me. Please, keep Grandma safe. Please, help me be strong tomorrow. The billionaire covered his face with his hands. His chest shook with silent sobs. Here he was, a man who had once owned billions crying because a poor boy was praying for him. Not for himself, not for riches, but for his friend. The next morning, the billionaire asked softly, Samuel, last night I heard you praying. Why do you thank God when you have so little? Samuel looked at him with gentle eyes. Because when you have nothing, even little things feel big. When I wake up and see the sun, when I eat even a small piece of bread, when I laugh with Grandma, when I have a friend like you, that is enough to thank for. The billionaire's lips trembled. He thought about his old life, where he had everything but never once felt thankful. He had always wanted more money, more power, more respect. But here was a boy who had almost nothing, and yet was grateful for every breath. That was Samuel's secret. Gratitude. But the city was still cruel. One afternoon, as they searched for work, a group of men pushed Samuel aside. They laughed at his size, mocked his torn clothes, and told him he was useless. The billionaire's fists tightened. For the first time since leaving his mansion, he felt anger rise. He wanted to shout at them, to fight them. But Samuel held his arm and whispered, "No, don't fight. Let it go. If we fight, we become like them." The billionaire stared at him in shock. This boy, beaten by life, refused to let hate enter his heart, and in that moment, the billionaire knew Samuel's real secret was not just survival. It was his ability to stay pure in a world that tried to break him. That night, as they lay under the stars again, the billionaire whispered, "Samuel, you are teaching me more than anyone ever has, but I feel ashamed. I had everything, yet I was blind. You have nothing, yet you see the truth." Samuel smiled softly. "Maybe that's why we met. You needed me, and I needed you. We are both learning." The billionaire closed his eyes, tears rolling down his cheeks. He had once thought he'd left billions to lose everything. But now, he realized, he left billions to meet Samuel, to learn from him, to discover the wealth of kindness, gratitude, and strength, and deep inside, he knew this boy's secret was not just his past. This boy's secret was the power to change lives, even the life of a man who once had it all. The nights were growing colder. The streets felt harsher. And the billionaire, once a man who had lived in golden halls, was now a shadow among the forgotten yet. Despite the pain, he felt something new growing inside him, something he never felt when he had billions. It was hope, and that hope had only one source. Samuel, one morning they went together to the marketplace. People rushed by, buying fruits, bargaining for clothes, and shouting loudly. Samuel carried an old tin can, hoping someone might throw a coin inside. The billionaire walked beside him quietly, his head down, ashamed. Every time he saw Samuel stretch his hand toward strangers, his chest hurt. But Samuel never begged with tears. He always greeted people politely, with respect. "Good morning, sir. Hello, ma'am. May God bless you." Some ignored him. Some mocked him. A few kind souls dropped coins into the can. At the end of the morning, they had enough for a small loaf of bread. Samuel smiled like it was a feast. But as they walked back, something unexpected happened. A man in a sharp suit suddenly blocked their way. He was tall, rich-looking, and carried a leather briefcase. His eyes stopped on Samuel. "You boy." The man shouted, "What are you doing here? Why aren't you in school?" Samuel lowered his head. "Sir, I cannot afford school." The man scoffed. "Excuses. Children like you will always stay useless. You'll grow up to be nothing but a beggar." The billionaire's fists clenched. His heart raced. He wanted to scream, "This boy is worth more than you will ever be." But Samuel gently touched his arm. His calm voice whispered, "Don't. He doesn't understand." The billionaire froze. How could Samuel stay so peaceful? That evening, they sat by the shack again. The grandmother coughed and sighed, her voice weaker than before. Samuel tore the loaf of bread in two, handing the bigger piece to the billionaire. "No," the billionaire protested. "You eat. You need it more." Samuel shook his head. "We share, always." The billionaire's throat burned. He took the bread but couldn't swallow. Instead, he asked, "Samuel, do you ever get angry? Don't you feel hate for the world that treats you this way?" Samuel looked at the sky, where the stars were starting to shine. His small face glowed in the faint light. "I used to," he said softly. "After my parents died, I was angry at everyone. Angry at life. Angry at God. But then I realized, anger makes me weaker. If I stay angry, I will never see the beauty left in the world. And even if it is small, it is still there." The billionaire stared at him, his chest tight. "This boy is teaching me more than all the books, all the meetings, all the advisors I ever had." The turning point came 2 days later. Samuel and the billionaire were near a construction site, hoping to find small jobs for the day. Workers carried bricks, lifted heavy steel, and shouted orders. The air smelled of dust and sweat. A supervisor noticed Samuel. "Hey, kid," he barked. "You want to earn some coins? Carry those bricks to the corner." Samuel nodded eagerly. His small body bent as he tried to lift the heavy load. Sweat poured down his face. His arms shook, but he did not complain. The billionaire rushed to him. "Stop, Samuel. It's too heavy for you." But Samuel smiled weakly. "If I don't do it, we won't eat tonight." The billionaire's heart cracked. He couldn't bear it. He stepped forward, grabbed the bricks himself, and carried them across the yard. The workers laughed. "Look at that old man. He can barely walk straight." But the billionaire didn't care. He carried load after load, his back aching, his hands bleeding. For the first time in his life, he worked like the poorest of men. When he returned, Samuel was staring at him with wide eyes. Not with pity, but with pride. "You didn't have to," Samuel whispered. The billionaire smiled weakly. "I did, because you've carried burdens heavier than bricks your whole life. Today, I carry them with you." Samuel's lips trembled. He didn't speak, but his eyes glistened with tears. That night, something changed as they sat together, tired and hungry. The billionaire finally spoke the truth. "Samuel," he whispered, "I was not always like this. I was once a man who had everything: cars, mansions, money, power. People bowed when I entered the room, but I was empty inside, lonely, cold. That is why I left it all. I wanted to know what life really means." Samuel listened silently, his eyes wide with surprise. The billionaire's voice broke. "But I never thought the one to teach me would be you." Samuel finally smiled. "Maybe that's why we met. Sometimes rich people need to lose everything to see the truth." This child, this poor boy, was not just surviving, he was shaping him. Breaking the walls around his soul, the true turning point came the next day. Samuel's grandmother grew very sick. She could hardly breathe. Her frail hands shook, her eyes half closed. Samuel panicked. "Grandma, stay with me, please." The billionaire rushed to her side. He felt her forehead; it was burning. He knew she needed medicine. Urgently, but they had no money. Not enough for even the cheapest medicine. Samuel looked at the billionaire, his eyes desperate. "What do we do? She can't die. She's all I have." The billionaire's chest thundered. He had never felt so helpless. All his billions were gone. All his power useless. He was just another poor man, unable to save a life. But then, deep inside, something snapped. He stood up, his fists clenched. "I will not let her die," he growled. He looked around at the streets, the buildings, the people rushing by. For the first time since he left his fortune, the billionaire felt a fire burn inside him. Not for money, not for power, but for love for Samuel, for his grandmother. For the boy who gave him life again. This was the turning point. The billionaire, who once ran away from responsibility, now stood ready to fight for it. And in that moment, Samuel whispered, "You're not just my friend anymore. You're my family." The billionaire's eyes filled with tears. For years, he had been surrounded by wealth, but no love. And now, sitting in a broken shack with a poor boy and a dying grandmother, he finally found what he was searching for. The grandmother's weak cough echoed through the shack. Each sound felt like a knife cutting through Samuel's small heart. He sat beside her, holding her wrinkled hand, tears falling down his cheeks. "Don't leave me, Grandma," he whispered. "Please, stay with me." The billionaire knelt on the other side, his face pale with fear. He had seen business empires collapse, fortunes vanish, and storms of the financial world. But nothing, not even losing billions, had shaken him like this moment. For the first time, he truly felt powerless. The billionaire turned to Samuel. "We need medicine. Now." "But we have no money," Samuel whispered, his voice breaking. "Not enough for the hospital? Not even for tablets?" The billionaire's heart raced. He thought of his old life where one phone call would bring doctors, nurses, and private hospitals rushing to his mansion. But now, he was just another nameless man on the street, his fists clenched. "No, I cannot let her die." Not after all Samuel has given me. He stood up suddenly. Stay with her, Samuel. I will find help. Samuel looked at him, fear flashing in his eyes. But what if you don't come back? The billionaire placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. His voice was steady, firm. I will come back. I promise. And with that, he ran into the night. The city was alive with noise cars honking, people shouting, lights glowing in the distance. The billionaire rushed through the streets, searching desperately. He stopped at a small pharmacy. The smell of medicine hit his nose as he stepped inside. Behind the counter, a young man in a white coat looked up. Yes, what do you need? The billionaire's voice shook. I need medicine for fever, for cough. My friend's grandmother. She's very sick. The pharmacist nodded. That will be $300.
Oh.
The billionaire froze. He reached into his pockets empty. Not even a coin. His hand shook. Please, he begged. She's dying. I don't have money, but I will repay you. I swear. The pharmacist's eyes narrowed. No money, no medicine. I'm not running a charity. The billionaire's heart sank. He wanted to scream, to cry, to shake the man by the shoulders. But instead, he walked out slowly, his chest heavy with despair. He tried another shop. Another rejection. Third. Still the same answer? At last, he collapsed on a bench, his body trembling. For the first time in years, he prayed, God, if you are real, please, don't let her die. Don't let that boy lose the only family he has. Take everything from me, but give them life. Tears rolled down his cheeks. He buried his face in his hands. Just then, a voice interrupted. Hey, old man, why are you crying? The billionaire looked up. A homeless man stood nearby, holding a plastic bag of food. His clothes were dirty, his beard long, but his eyes kind. The billionaire quickly explained, choking on his words. A boy's grandmother is dying. She needs medicine. I have no money. I don't know what to do, the homeless man sighed. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small handful of coins. This is all I have. Maybe it's enough to buy something small. The billionaire stared at him, shocked. This man, who had nothing, was willing to give everything. His throat burned as he whispered, Thank you. Thank you. He ran back to the pharmacy with the coins. They weren't enough for strong medicine, but he managed to buy a small bottle of syrup. It wasn't much, but it was something. Clutching the bottle tightly, he sprinted through the streets. His chest pounded. His breath tore through his lungs. When he finally reached the shack, Samuel rushed outside. Did you get it? The billionaire nodded, holding out the bottle. Samuel's eyes filled with tears of relief. Together, they helped his grandmother sit up and gave her the syrup. She swallowed slowly, her frail hands shaking. Then she lay back down, her breathing still heavy, but a little calmer. Samuel kissed her forehead. You'll be okay, Grandma. Please, be okay. The billionaire sat beside them, his heart heavy with guilt. He knew this small syrup might not be enough. She needed real treatment, doctor's care, and he had none of it to give. That night, as Samuel slept beside his grandmother, the billionaire sat awake, staring at the ceiling of the shack. His mind was a storm. Why did I leave everything? Why did I walk away from the billions that could save her life? Was I a fool? He clenched his fists. No, I left because I was lost, because I wanted to find the truth. And now I have found it in Samuel, in this family. But if I don't save her, I will lose them. I will lose the only real treasure I have left. His decision was clear. Tomorrow, he would not sit quietly. Tomorrow, he would fight. Morning came. The grandmother was weaker. Samuel's small eyes were red from crying. The billionaire placed his hand on the boy's shoulder. Samuel, today, we will find a way. We will not stop until she gets help. Samuel looked at him, fear mixed with hope. But how? The billionaire stood tall, his voice firm. By doing what I should have done long ago, using my strength not for myself, but for others. And so began their struggle for hope. They ran from one clinic to another, begging doctors to help. Some turned them away. Some asked for money. A few gave small tablets. But still, it wasn't enough. At one clinic, a kind nurse secretly slipped Samuel a packet of medicine. "Don't tell anyone," she whispered. "I can't do more, but maybe this will help." Samuel hugged the medicine like it was gold. Tears streamed down his face. "Thank you. Thank you." The billionaire's heart swelled. He realized that kindness was not gone from the world. It was hidden in small acts, in people who cared. By nightfall, they returned to the shack. Exhausted but carrying the medicine, Samuel gave it to his grandmother, holding her hand the entire time. The billionaire sat quietly, watching. He thought about the cruel pharmacist, the kind nurse, the homeless man who gave him coins. He thought about Samuel's courage, his grandmother's suffering, and suddenly, he understood. Life is not about what we keep. It is about what we give. Wealth means nothing if it does not save lives, heal pain, and bring hope. He whispered to himself, "If she survives, I will never go back to being the same man again." That night, as Samuel drifted to sleep beside his grandmother, the billionaire sat outside the shack under the stars. His hands trembled, his eyes wet. He whispered, "Samuel, you were my teacher from the start. You showed me kindness, gratitude, courage. But now you have shown me something greater, hope. Even when the world turns dark, hope keeps us alive." And deep inside, he made a silent vow. He would not let this family fade away into the shadows of the city. He would fight for them. And for the first time, the billionaire was ready to use his past, his name, his connections, his lost fortune, not for pride, but for love. This was no longer just survival. This was war for hope. The city was still asleep when the billionaire opened his eyes. He had not slept all night. He had sat outside the shack, staring at the stars, listening to the weak breathing of Samuel's grandmother. The silence of the night had given him time to think. And in that silence, a question had echoed again and again. What am I willing to sacrifice for this boy? For his family? Morning came slowly. Samuel woke first, rubbing his tired eyes. His small body leaned against the wall, weak from hunger and stress. Yet, the moment he saw his grandmother move, he smiled with relief. "She's still here," Samuel whispered softly, touching her hand. The billionaire felt his chest tighten. He saw how much the boy loved her, how every second of her life was a treasure to him, and he knew if the grandmother slipped away, Samuel's world would break. That day they tried again to find work. The billionaire carried bricks until his back ached. Samuel ran errands, shining shoes, and carrying water for strangers. Their hands grew blistered, their stomachs empty. But still, the money was not enough for real treatment. By evening, the grandmother grew weaker. Her breathing rattled. Her eyes half closed. Samuel's small hands shook as he held her. "Don't leave me, Grandma. Please. Stay with me." The billionaire could not take it anymore. His heart pounded. His mind screamed. He stood suddenly. "No more waiting. No more begging. I know what I must do." Samuel looked up at him, confused. "What do you mean?" The billionaire's eyes burned with determination. "I once left behind a fortune. But maybe I was wrong to walk away from all of it. Not if it can save a life." Samuel's eyes widened. You were really rich." The billionaire knelt in front of him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Yes, Samuel. I was a billionaire. I left it all because I was empty inside. I wanted to know what life meant without money. That's why I came here. That's why I met you." Samuel's mouth opened, but no words came out. His eyes filled with shock. The billionaire's voice trembled. "But now, I realize my billions were not meant for palaces or cars. They were meant for people like you. For lives that need saving. And if I must give up the last pieces of my pride, I will. For you. For her." That night, the billionaire made a decision. He walked back to the city, his steps firm. He went to the luxury hotel where the rich gathered. Guards stared at him with disgust, but his voice was strong. "Tell the manager that Mr. Harrington is here," the guards laughed. "Who?" You look like a beggar." But when the manager came, his eyes widened in shock. "Sir, is it really you?" The billionaire nodded. His voice was low. "Yes, I am back. But not for me. For a life that must be saved." The manager rushed him inside, hiding the stares of wealthy guests. Within minutes, business partners, reporters, and old friends heard the news the missing billionaire had returned. They gathered quickly, shocked to see him in torn clothes, his face thin, his hands rough. "Why did you disappear?" One asked. "Where have you been?" Another demanded. "You look like a beggar." Someone whispered. The billionaire raised a hand. His voice was calm, steady. "I left because I was blind. I had wealth, but no heart. Power, but no peace. I wanted to see what life was like without billions. And in that journey, I found something far greater than money. I found a boy who taught me kindness, courage, gratitude, a boy who showed me what it means to be truly rich." The room fell silent. He continued, his voice breaking with emotion. "But that boy's grandmother is dying. She needs help. And tonight, I am here not for myself, but for them. I am willing to give up everything, every last dollar, if it means saving her life." Gasps filled the room. The reporters scribbled notes furiously. Business partners exchanged glances. One man sneered. "You mean to tell us? After leaving billions, you now crawl back for a poor old woman?" The billionaire's eyes flashed. "Yes, because one life is worth more than every empire I ever built. If you cannot see that, then you are poorer than any beggar on the street." The room fell silent again. The manager cleared his throat. "Sir, we can arrange immediate medical help. Shall I call the hospital?" The billionaire's voice trembled with relief. "Yes, do it now." Within an hour, an ambulance was sent to the shack. Samuel cried tears of joy as doctors lifted his grandmother into the vehicle. "Grandma, you'll be okay," he whispered, clutching her frail hand. "Help has come." The billionaire stood behind him, his heart pounding. At the hospital, doctors rushed her into treatment. Samuel and the billionaire sat in the waiting area, their hands clenched, their eyes fixed on the doors. Minutes felt like hours. Every tick of the clock was torture. Finally, a doctor came out. "She is stable now, but she will need strong medicine and care for the next few weeks." Samuel jumped up, hugging the doctor's arm. "Thank you. Thank you." The billionaire closed his eyes, tears slipping down his cheeks. Relief washed over him like a flood. That night, as Samuel slept in a chair beside his grandmother's bed, the billionaire sat quietly by the window. His mind replayed everything: the streets, the hunger, the cruelty, the kindness of strangers, the laughter of Samuel, the prayers of the boy, and finally, the choice he had made. He had given up pride, comfort, and everything he once thought important. But in return, he had gained something priceless: family, love, and the power of sacrifice. The next morning, Samuel woke to find the billionaire still sitting by the window, his eyes red but his face peaceful. "Why didn't you sleep?" Samuel asked. The billionaire smiled faintly. "Because last night I finally understood something. Wealth is not measured in gold or houses. It is measured in sacrifice, in what we give, not what we keep." Samuel's eyes softened. "You gave everything. For us?" The billionaire shook his head gently. "No, Samuel. You gave everything first. You gave me kindness when I had none. You gave me courage when I was weak. You gave me love when I was alone. My sacrifice is nothing compared to yours." As Samuel's lips trembled, he threw his arms around the billionaire, hugging him tightly, and for the first time, the billionaire hugged him back like a father would hug his own son. The hospital corridors were quiet, filled with the smell of medicine and the soft sound of footsteps. Samuel sat by his grandmother's bed, holding her hand, watching her chest rise and fall gently. She was weak but alive. The billionaire stood near the window, staring out at the city. The same city where he once ruled from skyscrapers, where his name was spoken with awe, and where money obeyed his every command. But now, when he looked at it, he didn't see power. He saw people. People like Samuel. People like the grandmother. People forgotten by wealth, yet holding the real meaning of life. News of his return spread quickly. The missing billionaire, once thought dead or insane, was suddenly back in the spotlight. But he wasn't dressed in suits or surrounded by guards. He was seen walking into a hospital in torn clothes, holding the hand of a poor black boy. Headlines exploded. Missing billionaire returns with homeless child? He gave up fortune to live on streets now. He saves a life. From mansions to shacks, the unbelievable journey of Mr. Harrington. Reporters crowded outside the hospital. Cameras flashed. Journalists begged for answers, but the billionaire refused interviews. He only said one line before walking away: "My billions mean nothing compared to one life." Inside the hospital, Samuel watched in amazement. "Why do so many people care about you?" he asked quietly. The billionaire knelt down, looking him in the eyes. "Because once, I was one of the richest men in the world. Everyone cared about my money. But now, I only want people to care about what really matters." Samuel frowned thoughtfully. "And what is that?" The billionaire smiled softly. "Love, sacrifice, family." Samuel's lips trembled. Slowly, he nodded. Days passed. The grandmother's condition improved. With proper medicine and rest, her coughing eased, her strength returned little by little. Samuel glowed with joy. Every smile, every laugh from her felt like a miracle. But the billionaire was restless. He spent hours pacing the hospital corridors, deep in thought. One night, Samuel caught him staring at the city lights again. "Why do you look so serious?" the boy asked. The billionaire sighed. "Because I know this world still needs change. I have seen too much suffering in the streets. Children like you deserve schools. Families like yours deserve homes. No one should choose between medicine and hunger." Samuel tilted his head. "But what can we do? We are small." The billionaire placed his hand on Samuel's shoulder. His voice was steady, almost like a vow. "We may be small, Samuel, but together we can be strong. Strong enough to change lives." The next morning, the billionaire faced the media. This time, he did not hide. He stood tall in front of flashing cameras, Samuel beside him. "I once left billions behind," he began, his voice echoing with emotion. "I thought money had no meaning. But now I understand. It does have meaning, when used to heal, to feed, to educate, to save." He paused, glancing at Samuel. The boy's eyes shone with pride. "This boy taught me what no business school, no empire, no fortune ever could. He taught me kindness, gratitude, and sacrifice. And today, I make a promise. My wealth will no longer serve myself. It will serve children like him, families like his, the forgotten souls of this city." The crowd gasped. Reporters scribbled furiously. Some clapped. Some stood in silence, stunned. That evening, Samuel tugged at his sleeve. "You really mean it? You'll use your money for people like us?" The billionaire knelt, smiling softly. "Not my money, Samuel. Our mission? From now on, we work together. You are not just my student, you are my partner." Samuel's mouth dropped open. "Partner?" The billionaire chuckled. "Yes, you will help me see the truth. You will remind me what really matters. Together, we will build something greater than riches." Samuel's heart swelled. For the first time, he didn't feel like just a poor boy. He felt important, needed, loved, but not everyone was happy. Business partners from his past came knocking. Some begged him to return to the old ways, promising even greater fortunes. Others mocked him, saying he had lost his mind. One evening, a wealthy man sneered, "Why waste billions on beggars? They will always be poor. You cannot change the world." The billionaire's eyes flashed. He stood firm. "Then watch me try." Samuel, standing by his side, lifted his chin proudly. Weeks passed. The grandmother grew stronger, walking slowly with Samuel's help. She often whispered prayers for the billionaire, blessing him for saving her life. One night, As they all sat together in the small hospital room, Samuel leaned against the billionaire and asked softly, "Do you ever regret leaving your fortune before?" The billionaire smiled gently. "No, because if I hadn't, I would never have met you. And you are worth more than all the gold in the world." Samuel's eyes filled with tears. He hugged the billionaire tightly, and in that embrace, the billionaire finally understood he had left behind wealth to discover a richer treasure, family, but deep inside, he knew their journey wasn't over, because for every Samuel in the city, there were thousands more children, hungry, homeless, forgotten, and he was ready to fight for them. This was not the end. This was only the return. The sun was rising over the city, painting the sky with gold and fire. The billionaire stood on the rooftop of the hospital, Samuel beside him. The boy leaned against the railing, his eyes wide as he looked at the tall buildings and busy streets below. From up here, Samuel whispered, "Everything looks so small." The billionaire placed a hand on his shoulder. "Yes, but never forget, Samuel. Even the smallest things can change the world." The first step news of his speech had spread across the country. People were waiting to see if the billionaire's promise was real or just another story to fill newspapers. Some mocked him. Others admired him. But he did not waste time. The very next day, he visited one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city. Samuel walked with him, holding his hand tightly. The streets were filled with broken houses, hungry children, and families struggling to survive. Some people recognized him immediately. "That's him." A woman whispered, "The billionaire who went homeless?" A man added, staring in disbelief. Children gathered, looking at Samuel with curiosity. Samuel felt nervous. "Why are they staring at us?" The billionaire smiled. "Because they're waiting to see if we are here for real." Shocking sigh. As they walked deeper, they saw a group of children digging in trash bins, searching for food. Their small hands were covered in dirt, their faces pale with hunger. Samuel froze. His chest tightened. He remembered his own nights of digging through garbage, looking for scraps to feed his grandmother. The billionaire noticed his pain. He knelt down, gently turning Samuel's face toward him. "This is why we are here," he said softly. Samuel nodded, tears in his eyes. The promise in action, the billionaire gathered the children and their families. With the money he still controlled, he arranged food trucks to arrive. For the first time in months, the children ate a proper meal. The sight of bread in their hands, rice in their bowls, and smiles on their faces touched everyone's hearts. Mothers cried. Fathers whispered blessings. But the billionaire didn't stop there. He stood in front of the crowd. "This is only the beginning. We will build a shelter here, a place where no child sleeps hungry again. And not just food schools, doctors, safety. That is my promise." The crowd erupted in applause. For the first time, hope filled the broken streets. Samuel's role at first. Samuel felt small among so many people. But soon, children surrounded him. One girl asked, "Is he really your father?" Samuel blushed. "No, but he's my family." Another boy whispered, "You're lucky. He listens to you." Samuel's heart swelled with pride. For the first time, he realized he wasn't just following the billionaire. He was part of the mission. The billionaire later told him, "You are my eyes, Samuel. You see what I don't? Never be afraid to speak." Samuel nodded, his chest glowing with determination. Enemies appear, but not everyone was happy. Behind the scenes, old business partners and wealthy elites gathered. They were furious. "He's throwing billions away on useless people," one shouted. "If this continues, others will follow him. We'll lose control," another warned. A powerful man slammed his hand on the table. "We must stop him. If he builds schools and shelters, he'll destroy the balance of power. Poor people are supposed to stay poor." The room fell silent. A dangerous plan was forming, a warning in the dark late one night. As the billionaire walked home from the shelter construction site, a black car pulled up beside him. A man in a suit stepped out, his voice cold. "Leave this path. Return to your world of riches. If you continue, you'll regret it." The billionaire looked at him calmly. "I've lived without money. I've lived with hunger. I've lived on the streets. What more can you take from me?" The man sneered. "We can take the boy." The billionaire's heart froze. His fists clenched. He stepped forward, his eyes burning with fire. "If you ever touch Samuel, you'll face a storm you cannot imagine." The man smirked and got back into the car. But his words lingered in the billionaire's mind like poison. Samuel's dream that night. Samuel had a dream. He saw himself standing on a stage, speaking to thousands of children. He told them not to give up, to fight, to believe they were worth something. And beside him, the billionaire stood proudly, smiling. When Samuel woke up, he rushed to the billionaire. "I had a dream. One day I will speak to the world, not just you." The billionaire smiled warmly. "Then I will make sure the world listens." The first school weeks later, the first shelter was completed. But it was more than just a shelter, it was also a school. Children walked inside with wide eyes. Sitting at desks for the first time, Samuel stood at the front handing out pencils. "Here," he said, smiling. "With this, you can write your own future." The billionaire watched from the back, his heart swelling with pride. The shadow grows, but his joy filled the streets. The enemies grew darker. Plans were made in secret. Lies began spreading in the media. Some newspapers wrote, "Billionaires' madness, wasting fortune on the poor." Is this just a publicity stunt? The billionaire didn't care. But Samuel worried. "Why do they hate you?" he asked one evening. The billionaire bent down, touching his cheek. "Because when you shine a light, Samuel, darkness will always try to fight it. But remember, light always wins." Samuel hugged him tightly, whispering, "Then we will never stop shining." A new beginning. The mission had begun. The billionaire and Samuel, hand in hand, stood at the doorway of the new shelter. Children laughed, mothers smiled, fathers nodded in gratitude. The city was watching, some with hope, some with hate. But one thing was clear. The billionaire's journey from riches to rags, from emptiness to purpose, had found its true path. And at the center of it all was a poor black boy who had once shared a piece of bread and ended up changing the fate of millions. The new school and shelter had changed everything. Children laughed in classrooms. Mothers cooked warm meals in the kitchen. Fathers found work helping build more shelters. Hope was spreading like fire in a cold night, and at the heart of it all stood Samuel, the boy who had once shared his bread with a stranger. But happiness never stays untested. The boy's first real trial was about to begin. Whisper of doubts, it started with whispers. In the streets, people began asking questions. Why is that boy always with the billionaire? Is he using him? Maybe he just wants his money. Samuel heard these words as he walked home. They cut deeper than any knife. That night, he sat alone in the small hospital room where his grandmother was still recovering. He held her hand and whispered, "Grandma, do you think people are right? Maybe he helps me only because I gave him food once. Maybe one day he will leave me too." His grandmother smiled weakly, brushing his cheek. "Samuel, real love is not about what you give once. It is about what you give every day. The man you walk with sees more in you than money. Don't let shadows cover the light you both carry." Samuel's heart still trembled. A dangerous trap one afternoon. As the billionaire met with architects for the next shelter, Samuel wandered into the marketplace. A man in a suit approached him. His smile was sharp, his words sweet. "You're Samuel, right? The famous boy? Everyone knows you now." Samuel nodded slowly. The man leaned closer. "Tell me, do you know how much money he really has?" "Billions." "And do you know who it belongs to?" "Not you, not the poor. Him. He will never give it all away. You're just his story. His decoration." Samuel frowned. "That's not true." He promised. The man cut him off, his voice turning cold. "Children believe promises, but men know truth. One day, he will forget you. And when he does, you'll be nothing again." Before Samuel could reply, the man slipped a card into his pocket and vanished into the crowd. The words echoed in Samuel's mind like poison. The argument that night, Samuel couldn't hold it in. He confronted the billionaire. "Tell me the truth," Samuel said, his small fists clenched. Do you really mean what you say? Or am I just a story for you? The billionaire froze. His eyes widened in pain. Samuel, why would you think that? Because people whisper. They say you'll leave me. They say I'm nothing without you. His voice cracked, his body shaking. The billionaire knelt down, holding his shoulders. Listen to me. You are not nothing. You are everything. You gave me hope when I had none. You showed me kindness when the world turned its back. Without you, I would still be lost. Samuel, you are not my story. You are my heart. Tears burned in Samuel's eyes. He wanted to believe, but the shadows of doubt were strong. He pulled away, whispering, I need time. Lost in the streets for the first time in weeks, Samuel walked the streets alone. The shelters and schools no longer looked bright to him. Every face seemed full of judgment. He remembered nights of hunger, days of pain. A voice in his head whispered, maybe you don't belong here. Maybe you'll never belong anywhere. Rain began to fall, soaking his clothes. Samuel curled under a broken roof, just as he had done before meeting the billionaire. For a moment, it felt like the old days again, cold, lonely, forgotten the test of kindness as he sat shivering. Samuel noticed a smaller boy nearby, barefoot and hungry. Digging through trash, the boy looked up at him with empty eyes. Do you have food? Samuel's stomach ached with hunger too. He had only one small piece of bread in his pocket, the bread his grandmother had given him earlier. His hands shook. Should he keep it? Should he give it away? Memories flooded back the night he shared bread with the strange man who turned out to be the billionaire. That one act had changed everything. Slowly, Samuel broke the bread in half and gave it to the boy. The child's face lit up with gratitude. He whispered, "Thank you," before eating quickly. Samuel's chest warmed. In that moment, he understood. Kindness was never about what others said. It was about what he chose. The reunion hours later, the billionaire found him. He had searched everywhere, panic written across his face. When he finally saw Samuel, sitting under the roof with the little boy, relief washed over him. He ran and hugged Samuel tightly. "Don't you ever disappear again," the billionaire whispered, his voice breaking. "Do you know how empty I felt without you?" Samuel looked up, tears streaming down his face. "I thought I was nothing without you. But today, I learned something. I am not nothing. Even small kindness matters. Just like the bread I gave you that night." The billionaire's eyes filled with tears. "Samuel, you have passed the greatest test, the test of heart. And now, I know you are not just my partner. You are my teacher." The boy's trial ends back at the shelter. Samuel told the children what had happened. He spoke with a voice stronger than ever before. "Don't believe those who say you are nothing. Even one act of kindness can change the world. I know, because I lived it." The children clapped. Mothers wept. Even the billionaire stood in the back, his chest swelling with pride. Samuel had faced his first trial not of hunger, not of pain, but of doubt. And he had overcome it with the same weapon he once gave to a stranger. Kindness, shadows in the distance, but far away. In a tall building, the men who wanted to stop the billionaire watched closely. One of them said, "The boy is stronger than we thought. He is dangerous. If people listen to him, they will rise. We must strike harder." The other nodded darkly. "Then we target what he loves most." The game was not over. Samuel had passed one trial. But darker storms were coming. The city was changing. In the new shelter, children studied under bright lights instead of street lamps. Families slept in warm beds instead of on cold pavements. For the first time in years, the poor dared to dream. And at the heart of every story, every whisper of hope, there was one name, Samuel. The boy who had once given bread to a stranger was now speaking to children, guiding them, filling them with courage. Some even called him the boy of light. Light always attracts shadows. And the shadows had been waiting. The enemies meeting at a tall, glass building far from the shelters. The powerful men gathered again. Their suits were expensive, their faces cold. One slammed his hand on the table. This must end. The billionaire is one thing but the boy. He is dangerous. Children listen to him, even adults. If he grows, people will rise against us. Another nodded grimly. The boy is their symbol. If he falls, hope will fall too. A silence filled the room. Then the leader spoke. Then we strike the boy. Uneasy peace back in the shelter. Life went on as usual. Samuel played football with the other children, his laughter echoing through the halls. The billionaire watched from a distance, smiling softly. But inside, the billionaire was uneasy. Since the night of the warning in the black car, he hadn't stopped worrying. He had hired guards near the shelters, but he knew powerful enemies didn't always strike openly. One evening, as Samuel sat beside him, the billionaire said quietly, "Samuel, promise me something." The boy tilted his head. "What is it?" "If anything ever feels wrong, if you sense danger unto me, don't be brave, be safe. Do you understand?" Samuel frowned. "But what about the others? What if they're in danger too?" The billionaire squeezed his shoulder. "We will protect them together. But first, I need you safe, because without you, I am nothing." Samuel's chest tightened. He nodded slowly. "I promise." The disappearance the next day. Samuel was walking home from school when a black van pulled up beside him. A man stepped out, smiling too kindly. "Samuel, we need you. Your grandmother is very sick again. Come quickly." Samuel froze. His heart raced. Could it be true? His grandmother had been weak lately. Fear clouded his thoughts. "Where is she?" he whispered in the van. "We'll take you to her." Samuel hesitated, remembering the billionaire's warning. But the man's voice was so smooth, so convincing, and the thought of his grandmother's suffering broke his heart. He stepped inside. The doors slammed shut. The van roared away. Samuel had vanished. The billionaire's furor was past. When Samuel didn't return, the billionaire felt a cold fear crawl into his chest. He searched every street, every corner, calling Samuel's name. The guards spread out, but there was no sign. Finally, a phone rang. The billionaire answered with shaking hands. A voice sneered on the other end. "We have the boy. If you want him back, end your mission. Shut down the shelters. Return to your world of riches, or the boy disappears forever." Billionaire's heart pounded. His knuckles turned white around the phone. "If you touch him," the voice laughed cruelly, "the choice is yours. Save the boy, or save the poor." The line went dead. The billionaire sank into a chair, his chest heavy. For the first time since leaving his mansion, he felt powerless. Samuel's trial in darkness. Samuel woke up in a dark room, tied to a chair. His small wrists hurt from the rope. The men around him laughed, smoking and drinking. One leaned close, sneering. "So, you're the boy everyone talks about." "The boy who made the billionaire weak?" Samuel stared back, fear in his eyes but defiance in his voice. "He is not weak. He is stronger than all of you, and he will find me." The man slapped him across the face. Samuel winced but didn't cry. "Stupid boy," the man growled. "Without him, you are nothing," Samuel whispered through his pain. "I was nothing before him. But now, I am something. And even if you kill me, others will rise. You cannot stop kindness." The men looked at each other, unsettled. The boy's words carried a weight they didn't expect. The billionaire's decision back at the hospital. The billionaire sat with Samuel's grandmother. She clutched his hand, her old eyes full of fear. "Please, bring him back," she whispered. The billionaire nodded, but inside he was breaking. He faced an impossible choice: abandon his mission to save Samuel, or risk losing the boy to save the city's poor. But then he remembered Samuel's own words, "Even one act of kindness can change the world." The billionaire stood tall, fire returning to his eyes. "I will save him, and I will not give up the mission. They cannot take both." The rescue with the help of loyal guards and a few people from the shelters, the billionaire tracked the van. It led to an abandoned warehouse at the edge of the city. As he approached, his fists clenched. Rage boiled inside him, but also fear. Inside, Samuel sat tied, still defiant. When he saw the billionaire burst through the doors, his eyes lit up. "You came?" he cried. "Always," the billionaire said, his voice like thunder. The men lunged, but they weren't prepared. The guards stormed in, a fight breaking out. Chairs smashed, fists flew, shouts filled the air. The billionaire himself fought like a man possessed, he protecting Samuel with every move. Finally, silence fell. The enemies lay defeated, scrambling out into the night. The billionaire rushed to Samuel, cutting the ropes, pulling him into his arms. "I'm sorry," Samuel whispered, tears finally breaking free. "I should have listened. I thought it was about Grandma." The billionaire shook his head, hugging him tight. "No, Samuel. This is not your fault. This is mine. I should have protected you better. But you are safe now. That's all that matters." A lesson in strength back at the shelter, Samuel stood before the children, a bandage on his cheek but fire in his eyes. "They tried to take me," he said. "They wanted to scare us. But I learned something: fear only wins if you let it. We are poor, yes. We are small, yes. But we are not weak. Together, we are stronger than them all." The children cheered. Mothers wept. The billionaire stood in the shadows, watching with pride. For the first time, Samuel was not just a boy who gave bread. He was a leader. The enemy's last warning, but far away. In the tall glass building, the enemies were not done. The leader slammed his fist on the table. He has grown too powerful. The boy is not just a child anymore. He is a voice. And voices can start revolutions. His eyes narrowed. If we cannot break them apart, then we will destroy them together. The war was far from over. The night after Samuel's rescue, the shelter was quiet. Children slept peacefully in warm beds. Mothers whispered prayers of gratitude. Fathers sat outside, smiling at the sound of laughter returning to their homes. But in the billionaire's heart, a storm still raged. He knew the enemies wouldn't stop. Samuel's kidnapping was only the beginning. And if they wanted to break his mission, they would strike again. The gathering of fear 1 week later, news broke. The powerful men had gone to court. They filed cases, claiming the billionaire was using his money illegally, spreading lies that his shelters were unsafe, and accusing him of manipulating the poor for power. Crowds gathered outside the courthouse. Some supported him, others doubted. Samuel stood beside him, holding his hand. "They want to scare you," he whispered. The billionaire looked down, his voice steady. "They don't scare me. But they scare the people who believe their lies. That is why today is important." The courtroom was full. Reporters sat with pens ready, cameras flashing. The enemies smirked, their lawyers sharp as knives. The judge entered. Silence fell. One lawyer spoke loudly. This man once abandoned his billions to live as a beggar. Now, he claims to save the poor. But in truth, he is a danger to the system. His boy, he pointed at Samuel, is nothing more than a tool used to make him look holy. Gasps filled the room. Samuel's fists clenched, but he stayed silent. The billionaire rose. His voice was calm, but strong. "You say he is a tool? This boy is my teacher, my guide, my reason. Without him, I would still be lost in riches, blind to suffering. Without him, I would not be here today." He turned to the crowd. "Do you want to know the truth? I left billions behind because I felt empty. I thought life had no meaning. But then, a poor black boy shared bread with me. Bread that was his only food. In that moment, I learned a lesson no money could ever buy, that real wealth is love, sacrifice, and kindness." The courtroom was silent. Even the judge leaned forward, listening. Samuel's eyes filled with tears. "Samuel speaks then." Unexpectedly, Samuel stood. His small voice carried across the room. "They say, I am nothing. Maybe I am poor. Maybe I am small. But I gave him bread when no one else cared. And if kindness makes me nothing, then I am proud to be nothing." The crowd gasped. Some clapped. some cried. The judge raised his hand. Silence returned after hours of arguments. He finally spoke. This court sees no crime in feeding the hungry, building schools, or healing the sick. If kindness is dangerous, then the world is already lost. Case dismissed. The enemies turned pale. Their plan had failed. The people rise outside the courthouse. Thousands waited. When the billionaire and Samuel stepped out, cheers erupted. Samuel! Samuel! Children shouted. Bless you both. Mothers cried. Even strangers wept, touched by the boy's courage. The billionaire lifted Samuel onto his shoulders. For the first time, he didn't just feel like a businessman or even a savior. He felt like a father carrying his son. The final confrontation, but the enemies weren't finished. Days later, they tried one last desperate move. They cut off supplies, blocking food trucks meant for the shelters. Hunger began to return. Fear spread among the poor. Samuel saw children crying again. His heart broke. He ran to the billionaire. We can't let them win. What do we do? The billionaire thought for a long moment. Then he smiled. We do what you taught me. We share. That evening, the billionaire opened the doors of his own mansion, the one he had left behind months ago. He brought every piece of food, every blanket, every bit of wealth still inside, and carried it to the shelters. He gave away his last luxuries. Samuel stood on the steps, handing out food to children. Just as he once had with bread, the enemies watched from a distance, furious. But the people's cheers drowned their power. The transformation weeks passed. The shelters grew stronger. Schools expanded. Doctors came to help. Volunteers arrived from across the city. What began with one boy's kindness had become a movement in the enemies. Their power faded. One by one, their businesses collapsed as people chose compassion over greed. The final lesson, one quiet evening. The billionaire, Samuel, and the grandmother sat together. The sun was setting, painting the sky in orange and gold. The grandmother smiled softly. You gave up billions, yet look at you now. You are richer than ever. The billionaire looked at Samuel. She is right. But Samuel, do you know why? Samuel tilted his head. Why? Because you taught me the final lesson? Wealth is not measured in gold or houses. Wealth is measured in the lives we touch, the love we give, and the kindness we leave behind. Samuel's eyes shone. He leaned against the billionaire, whispering, Then we are the richest family in the world. The billionaire hugged him tightly. The grandmother closed her eyes, whispering a prayer of thanks. Epilogue, a new dawn years later. People still told the story of the billionaire and the poor black boy. They told it in schools, in homes, in streets, but no one remembered the enemies. Their names faded into dust. What remained was a lesson passed down from generation to generation, that one act of kindness can change the world, that riches mean nothing without love, and that sometimes the poorest child can teach the greatest billionaire how to truly live.